Welcome to another movie plot. Spoilers ahead. A therapist ignores his patient while doodling Dreamcatchers on his notepad. Since Henry knows things that his patient has never told anyone before, the man leaves confused by his doctor's apparent clairvoyance. The good doctor pulls a revolver from the drawer and thinks about ending it all. Not doing so and instead blowing a hole in the office wall. He receives a call from his childhood friend Jonesy about meeting up with their friend Duddits, having been a long time since any of them got together. Jonesy is a history teacher and meets with a scholarship student who he knows cheated on his test. Noticing that the boy isn't well off by his tattered shoes, he gives the kid a pass, confusing the boy as to how he even knew he was cheating. Their friend Pete is a car salesman, who has a beautiful woman enter the showroom asking for help after losing her keys. He calls her by her name, which he says he guessed, then retraces her footsteps using a twirl of his fingers and accurately predicts the exact puddle she dropped them in. Freaked out by his knowledge of her events prior to dropping the keys, the lady turns down his offer of dinner and leaves. The final member of their little rat pack is Beaver, who has quit smoking and constantly chews on toothpicks to relieve his oral fixation. He calls his good friend Jonesy to tell him that he needs to be careful, having bad feelings recently. When Jonesy is walking home from the office, he begins to hear voices in his head. Before straight-faced walking right out into traffic and being hit by a car. While in the ambulance, he has a vision of his friend Duddits telling him to watch out for Mr. Gay. 6 months later and the four friends are on an annual hunting trip in Maine, with Jonesy having survived the accident and healing with mysterious speed. As Pete and Beaver cook dinner, Jonesy explains to Henry that the night of his accident he saw Duddits beckoning him from across the street, saying that Duddits loves the four of them and would never try to harm them. That night they sit around reminiscing while talking about their memory warehouse, a place that they can go to in their heads to store any information to refer to later, though being that Jonesy knows so much, he is having to throw out old memories to make room for new ones. Keeping all his juicy memories in a secret office out the back. The friends all discuss not seeing Duddits for a long time and toast to him, calling him their Dreamcatcher, before we are shown a flashback of exactly who Duddits is and how they met. As children, the four boys were out playing when finding a bunch of clothes in a Scooby-Doo lunchbox, all belonging to a kid with disabilities named Duddits, having been stripped and tortured by a group of bullies. The Scooby gang threatened to tell their parents about the bullies, causing them to worry when they mentioned Pete's name, the fastest kid in the whole town, and ready to use those abilities to race home. When the bullies leave, Beaver sings Duddits a song to calm him before the group takes him home, making a new lifetime friend in the process. With word of a blizzard on its way, Henry and Pete collect supplies for the night while Beaver and Jonesy go for a hunt. Out of nowhere, Jonesy encounters a man lost in the forest called Rick. So he brings him back to the cabin and sits Rick down under a Dreamcatcher, noticing that he's sickly and has a red rash coming over him. Beaver returns and outright asks the stranger what's with the rashes, but Rick just says he has allergies. He begins burping and farting uncontrollably, so the two decide to let him rest and recover, not noticing the creature moving around in his stomach. Henry and Pete are driving back with the supplies, when Henry begins to feel bad for the patient he treated 6 months ago. Saying that he just learned the man ate himself to death. When coming up over a ridge, they are forced to swerve off the road to avoid hitting a frosty hunter. They total the truck but both manage to survive, and get out in one piece, with Pete only hurting his leg and needing to limp. They confront the frozen lady and assume she is dead, but she reaches out to them for help. She asks to see the other member of her hunting party, Rick, farting and showing the same red marks as him. Not being able to carry her all the way back to the cabin, Pete decides to stay with the frostbitten woman and keep her warm while Henry treks back to get some medical help. Back at Jonesy and Beaver, they notice that all the forest animals, both predator and prey, are running past the cabin in the same direction. With the boys curious as to what they are fleeing from, and again noticing a red rash beginning to spread, a military helicopter flies overhead and announces that the area is now a quarantine zone. The first helicopter leaves to reveal the head of this operation, the unhinged Colonel Abraham Curtis. The boys enter the cabin to find a trail of Rick's blood from the bedroom to the bathroom. They ask him what's wrong, but he responds through the door that he isn't bleeding. So they break in and find Rick sitting dead on the toilet with the red growth everywhere. His body collapses, revealing a second hole in his ass and a creature in the toilet, so quick-thinking Beaver sits on the lid. He tries to flush it, but it doesn't work, knocking his supply of toothpicks onto a puddle of blood. Jonesy regretfully leaves Beaver alone to go to the tool shed to look for some duct tape, when Beaver notices a patch of dried toothpicks and can't resist. He fights his urges for a while but inevitably reaches too far for a toothpick, and the creature bursts free and latches onto Beaver. A 3-foot-long alien worm begins to attack him, when Jonesy finally finds the tape and gets back. Beaver grabs the worm before it can go for his friend, sacrificing himself. Jonesy then traps the worm in the bathroom, but the doorknob breaks off, and the worm slithers over to and up the body of a large alien called Mr. Gray. Jonesy asks what he wants with him, but Mr. Gray just bursts into his true form, a parasitoid alien macrovirus, and possesses Jonesy's body. He then uses him to take a snowmobile, and cheerfully rides off into the storm. Meanwhile, an elite military unit specializing in extraterrestrials has the whole town rounded up under Curtis's orders, seeking to contain everyone exposed to the alien threat which they call the Ripley. His trusted friend and second-in-command Captain Owen Underhill joins him for one last hurrah, as the veteran colonel is planning to retire after this operation and will pass command on to Owen. Curtis briefs him on the mission, telling him that the threat takes on the appearance of a smooth-skinned gray alien, because that's what humans find more appealing. With a young soldier in his unit having let a mother out of the quarantine zone, Curtis shoots him in the hand as punishment. He then gives the pearl-handled pistol to Owen as a gift, and the two plan for a smiley outcome. Pete kills time waiting for a rescue by chatting away to the frozen woman, not realizing she has already died and excreted a worm that begins making its way around to him. He tells her how they all acquired telepathic powers which they call the Line, from their friend Duddits, and has lately been wondering if he is really an alien come to Earth to warn them of a threat. He goes to take a leak when the butt worm reveals itself and latches onto his junk. Pete dives onto the fire pit and uses the flame to detach its grip, but it bites onto his face, requiring him to burn it with a flaming log. A hiking Henry is happy to hear a snowmobile heading his way, but is telepathically warned to stay hidden by Jonesy. Mr. Gray is now speaking with Jonesy in his head, having read his memory warehouse and all of its speech files. But he becomes distressed when Jonesy says Mr. Gray, confused as to who told him that name. He reaches Pete to find that he barely managed to kill the worm, and begins trying to convince him to use the line to find a way out, but forces him to with threats when he doesn't comply. Pete, now infected with the Ripley, takes Mr. Gray in the direction of the highway, as Jonesy is watching on from his memory warehouse. He is also trying to keep him out of his secret office, and is simply lucky that Mr. Gray hasn't yet found his files on Duddits. Henry returns to the cabin to find the entire place covered in the Ripley, a fast-moving fungus covering everything in sight including Beaver's dead body. Henry notices the worm that killed him protecting a group of freshly laid eggs, so he blows its dome off. But seeing an already hatched batch of alien larvae, he sets fire to the cabin and burns the whole place down, including the Dreamcatcher that the friends all made together when they were children. One day as kids, after learning of Duddits' tracking ability, they used him to find a missing girl. Duddits asked if they are going to save the world from Mr. Gay, but the kids assume he says mystery and just agree. So instead of locating the girl, Duddits gave the kids the line. They all gained their telekinetic abilities, and used them to find the missing girl alive in a well. Curtis and Underhill fly overhead of Henry leading an airstrike into a large forest clearing. They begin to hear telepathic voices from the aliens asking for mercy, but they ignore them and fly directly to where the alien spaceship has crash landed. The aliens appear as skinny gray men and signal for help, as the helicopters massacre most of them with missiles and miniguns. When fleeing, they revert to their regular appearance of giant worms and initiate the ship's self-destruct sequence, destroying all the soldiers except for Curtis and Underhill, who notice the ship cooking. Fed up with Pete telling him to bite his bag, Mr. Gray puts Pete out of his Ripley-related misery. When he arrives at the highway, he flags down a truck and quickly eats the driver, then feeds the driver's dog some alien flesh and begins making his way to civilization. Jonesy uses this time to collect all the memories he has of Duddits and hide them in his office before Mr. Gray realizes he's out. Henry arrives at the fenced-in quarantine camp filled with hundreds of infected, as well as many still healthy. He reads the minds of Curtis and Underhill as they discuss their plans to kill all of those quarantined, with Underhill not on board with killing innocent people, but following his orders. Henry catches Underhill on his way out and asks what his wife and daughter would think, using their names and quoting his dead father's last words. He eventually convinces the captain to prevent the extermination by going over Curtis's head and having him relieved of duty. So the regular army arrives and takes over from Curtis's team while Underhill breaks Henry out of the camp. Unbeknown to Underhill, Curtis's gift was actually a tracking device which he is using to continue his mission in secret. Henry goes to Duddits' house in Derry to find out why the alien fears his friend so much. He speculates that the reason why Jonesy hasn't been completely taken over by Gray is that he died 6 months ago and was resuscitated, changing him somehow. They arrive in Derry to his mother already awaiting their arrival, and see that Duddits has been diagnosed with cancer and now uses his Scooby-Doo lunchbox for his meds. They tell his mother nothing of the situation, but she allows Henry to take Duddits with them, as she hasn't seen him this happy in a long time and doesn't want him to die locked inside his awful room. She knows she will never see her son again, and tearfully tells him to go save the world. Duddits informs Henry that Mr. Gray is headed for the reservoir to pollute the water with alien larvae, saying that one worm can infect the world. He then makes contact with Jonesy, which alerts Mr. Gray for the first time to Duddits' presence on the planet. Duddits didn't tell the boys about Gray, not because he had trouble communicating, but so that they wouldn't have any information on him in their memory warehouse if he were to invade their minds. Curtis leaves the camp in his attack helicopter and all three parties begin converging on the town's water supply, with Mr. Gray reaching the reservoir first and attempting to get his German Shepherd nest into the supply. Henry and Underhill arrive shortly after, where Underhill decides to go in alone since he's the one with training, but is ambushed soon after by his former mentor. Curtis mortally wounds Underhill with the chopper, but he manages to use Curtis's own pistol against him, bringing his attack chopper down and leaving both alien hunters dead at the scene. Henry takes Underhill's gun with no other option and tells Duddits to wait at the car. In the reservoir's pump house, the parasite emerges from the dog just as Henry enters the building. He manages to stop Mr. Gray's plan by killing the creature. Mr. Gray begins pandering to Henry as if he is Jonesy, trying to convince him that the alien is gone and only his friend remains, all just to buy time for his last remaining worm to enter the water system. Suddenly Duddits confronts Mr. Gray, who finally exits Jonesy's body in all his glory. He easily throws the humanoid to the ground and stabs him through the chest with his tail, but the two begin to struggle, and Duddits reveals himself to be an alien of a different race, stabbing Gray through the back with his own. Both aliens encase in a large cocoon together, before exploding in a cloud of red dust resembling a Dreamcatcher. Henry can see that his friend is himself, and the final Ripley worm is squished by Jonesy. And the movie ends.
That is.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more.